Amara stood in front of her bathroom mirror, carefully applying the final touches to her makeup. She had been looking forward to this dinner for weeks. Today was the day she would introduce her boyfriend Kwame to her mother, Mrs. Okonkwo. They had been dating for almost 2 years now and everything felt right. Kwame was a successful accountant, came from a good family and most importantly he loved Amara deeply. She believed that her mother would be happy for her, would see how much Kwame cared, and would give them her blessing. The restaurant was one of the finest in Lagos, located in the heart of Victoria Island. Amara arrived first and chose a table by the window overlooking the city lights. She wore a beautiful blue dress that Kwame had bought for her last month. Her hair was styled perfectly, and she felt confident and beautiful. When Kwame arrived, he kissed her gently on the cheek and pulled out her chair. They held hands across the table, stealing glances at each other like teenagers in love. Mrs. Okonkwo arrived exactly on time as she always did. She was a woman of principle and tradition, known in her community for her strong opinions and her ability to manage family affairs with an iron hand. She was dressed in a traditional wrapper and a matching blouse, her gray hair styled neatly in cornrows. She hugged Amara briefly, then turned to assess Kwame with sharp, analytical eyes. He stood up to greet her respectfully, shaking her hand warmly and addressing her as Ma, the way a proper young man should. During dinner, Kwame was charming and polite. He asked Mrs. Okonkwo about her life, her work, and her family history. He listened carefully to her stories about raising Amara and her younger sister Chioma. He laughed at her jokes and showed genuine interest in everything she said. Amara watched her mother's expression soften slightly as the evening progressed. She felt relieved and happy. Everything was going perfectly. However, after dinner, when Amara excused herself to use the restroom, something shifted. Mrs. Okonkwo's expression changed completely. She leaned toward Kwame and began speaking in a low, serious voice. She started by praising him, telling him that he was clearly a good man, that he came from a respectable family, and that he had done well for himself in his career. Kwame smiled, accepting the compliments graciously. But then Mrs. Okonkwo's tone became more cautious and concerned. She explained that she had been thinking about Amara's future, and she had some worries. She told Kwame that Amara, while intelligent and capable, was perhaps too ambitious and too focused on her career. She said that in the long run, this might make her difficult as a wife. She mentioned that Amara sometimes made decisions without consulting others, which could be problematic in a marriage where a wife should be more submissive and respectful of her husband's authority. Kwame listened politely but began to feel uncomfortable. He tried to defend Amara, saying that her ambition was one of the things he admired most about her. Mrs. Okonkwo held up her hand, stopping him mid-sentence. She then introduced a different topic altogether. She began talking about Chioma, Amara's younger sister. Chioma was 28 years old and still unmarried. In their community, this was becoming a serious concern. Neighbors were asking questions, relatives were gossiping, and it was affecting the family's reputation. Mrs. Okonkwo explained that she was worried about Chioma's future. She was a good girl, Mrs. Okonkwo said, obedient, respectful, family-oriented, and genuinely interested in being a traditional wife and mother. She had always dreamed of settling down and raising a family. Mrs. Okonkwo then suggested something that made Kwame's stomach drop. She proposed that perhaps Kwame would be better suited to marry Chioma instead. She explained that Chioma would be a more devoted wife, more willing to support her husband's career without distraction, and more likely to prioritize family and children above all else. She painted a picture of a perfect marriage where Kwame would be respected and obeyed, where his home would be peaceful and orderly, and where his wife would focus entirely on making him happy and comfortable. Kwame was shocked and confused. He tried to protest, but Mrs. Okonkwo was a skilled manipulator. She told him that she could see he was a good man, and she was only offering this advice because she cared about his future and wanted him to be truly happy. She said that marrying Amara would lead to constant conflict because Amara would always want to work, always want to pursue her own goals, and would never truly be satisfied with being a wife and mother. But with Chioma she promised life would be different. When Amara returned from the restroom, she noticed that something had changed. The warm, friendly atmosphere was gone. Kwame seemed distant and thoughtful. Mrs. Okonkwo was smiling, but it was a different kind of smile. The smile of someone who had just planted a seed of doubt and was waiting to see if it would grow. Over the following weeks, Mrs. Okonkwo executed her plan with careful precision. She began visiting Kwame's family home regularly, speaking privately with his mother. She told Kwame's family that Amara was not serious about marriage, that she would probably never want to leave her job to have children, and that she was too independent to be a good daughter-in-law. Meanwhile, she arranged for Chioma to appear in places where Kwame frequented. At family gatherings, Chioma was always there, dressed beautifully, laughing at Kwame's jokes, and making sure he felt appreciated and valued. Chioma herself was caught in the middle of this scheme. She had always admired Kwame from afar, but she also loved her sister. However, their mother was relentless in her manipulation. She convinced Chioma that Kwame had only been interested in Amara because she was older and more established, but that deep down he would prefer someone younger and more malleable. Mrs. Okonkwo told Chioma that if she didn't act, Kwame would marry Amara and then regret it for the rest of his life. She painted the picture as though she was doing everyone a favor, saving Kwame from a bad marriage, giving Chioma the love she deserved and protecting the family's reputation. Amara began to notice changes in Kwame's behavior. He became distant, less affectionate, and started finding reasons to cancel dates. When she asked him what was wrong, he gave vague answers. He said he was stressed about work, that he needed time to think about their relationship, and that he wasn't sure if they were compatible. Amara was confused and hurt. She tried to talk to him about their future, but he avoided the conversation. Then one day, Kwame came to see her and said he needed to be honest. He told her that he had been thinking a lot, and he realized that their relationship might not work. He said he had feelings for someone else, Chioma. Amara felt as if her heart had been ripped out of her chest. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She asked him why he hadn't told her sooner, why he had let this go on for so long, and how he could betray her with her own sister. Kwame looked guilty and ashamed, but he didn't have good answers. He simply said that he was sorry that he hadn't planned for this to happen, but that he had realized Chioma was the one he really wanted. 8 months later, he married Chioma in a beautiful ceremony. Amara attended wearing a brave smile, but inside she was shattered. She had been betrayed by the man she loved and by her own family. The pain of that betrayal would take years to heal. Amara sat in her new apartment in Accra, Ghana, staring out at the city lights below. It was a Friday night, and instead of being home with a husband and family, she was alone. But this time being alone felt different. It felt like freedom rather than loneliness. She had been in Accra for 3 months now, and already she could feel the weight of her past beginning to lift from her shoulders. The decision to leave Lagos had not been easy. Her mother had begged her to stay, promising that time would heal everything and that she should not run away from her problems. But Amara knew that staying would only keep her trapped in the shadow of her betrayal. Every street corner in Lagos held a memory. Every restaurant reminded her of moments with Kwame. Every family gathering would force her to face the people who had hurt her most. She needed to escape, to find herself again, and to prove to herself that her life was not over. She had applied for a job transfer with her company 6 months before Kwame's marriage to Chioma. The company had been looking to expand their operations in Ghana, and they needed a bright, talented marketing manager to lead the initiative. Amara had poured herself into that interview, presenting her ideas with passion and confidence. When they offered her the position, she had cried, but these were tears of hope rather than despair. Moving to Accra had been the best decision of her life. The city felt vibrant and full of possibility. It was different from Lagos, less familiar, which meant less painful. She had found a nice 2-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood, close to her new office. She had decorated it carefully, choosing bright colors and modern furniture that reflected the new woman she was becoming. She bought plants for her balcony and hung pictures of herself with her closest friends, not family photos, but photos of people who had chosen to be in her life. Her job became her focus and her salvation. She threw herself into work with an intensity that surprised even her supervisors. She worked long hours, traveled across Ghana to meet with clients, and developed marketing strategies that increased the company's revenue by 40% in her first year. Her boss, Mr. Mensah, was impressed by her dedication and her talent. He began giving her more responsibility and higher-profile projects. He told her that she had real potential for advancement and that he believed she could become a regional director within a few years. But work was not the only thing that helped Amara heal. She made new friends in Accra. She joined a yoga class at a studio near her apartment and met other women who were also building independent lives. There was Amma, a lawyer who had come to Accra to escape an arranged marriage her parents were trying to force on her. There was Nadia, a journalist and blogger who wrote about women's issues and social justice. There was Zara, an artist who had left her husband because he was controlling and unsupportive of her dreams. These women became her sisters, her support system, and her inspiration. With these friends, Amara did things she had never done before. They went to concerts and art exhibitions. They took weekend trips to the beach and to the countryside. They stayed up late talking about their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. They laughed together, cried together, and encouraged each other to be brave and true to themselves. For the first time in her life, Amara felt like she had genuine friendships, not based on family obligation or romantic relationships, but based on genuine connection and mutual respect. During her second year in Accra, Amara took up dancing. She had always loved music and movement, but she had never pursued it seriously. Now she enrolled in an Afrobeats dancing class 3 times a week. The dance studio was filled with women of all ages and backgrounds, and dancing became a form of therapy for her. As the music played and her body moved, she felt herself releasing the pain and anger that she had been holding inside. The dance became a conversation between her body and her soul, a way of expressing emotions that were too complex for words. Her mother called regularly during these first few years, trying to convince her to come home and reconcile with the family. Mrs. Okonkwo would cry on the phone, saying that she was sorry that she had made a terrible mistake, and that she wanted to make things right. But Amara was not ready to forgive. She was polite to her mother, but she kept conversations short and distant. She would listen to her mother's apologies, but she would not commit to visiting or to rebuilding their relationship. She knew that forgiveness would come eventually, but first she needed to fully heal and to fully understand what had happened to her. About a year and a half after moving to Accra, Amara heard from a mutual friend that Kwame and Chioma had had their first child, a son. A few months later they had a second child, a daughter. The news stung a little, but not as much as she expected. She realized that she was no longer attached to the life she had imagined with Kwame. She no longer wanted that life. She had built something different, something better, something that was entirely her own. She also heard, through whispers and social media, that Kwame and Chioma's marriage was not as perfect as it appeared on the surface. Chioma had stopped working to raise the children, and she seemed to be struggling with the isolation of motherhood. Kwame, meanwhile, was working constantly, trying to provide for his growing family. They rarely seemed happy together in photos. But Amara found that she did not take satisfaction in their unhappiness. Instead, she felt a strange compassion for them. She had moved beyond wanting revenge or validation. She had moved into a space of genuine indifference. She no longer cared about their lives because she was too busy living her own. By the end of her 4th year in Accra, Amara had been promoted to regional director. She was overseeing marketing operations for Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Burkina Faso. She was making excellent money, traveling frequently, and building a professional reputation that was respected throughout West Africa. She had purchased her own car, a beautiful silver sedan that represented her independence and her success. She had also started saving money to eventually buy an apartment instead of renting. On her 30th birthday, which she celebrated with her friends at a fancy restaurant, Amara looked around at the faces of the women who had become her chosen family. She realized that she no longer felt angry or bitter about what had happened in Lagos. She felt grateful. If Kwame and Chioma had not betrayed her, she might still be in Lagos, stuck in a life she had not chosen for herself. She might never have discovered her own strength and capability. She might never have learned that she could be happy and fulfilled without being defined by a romantic relationship. Her mother sent her a beautiful card for her 30th birthday, with a handwritten letter inside expressing her pride in Amara's accomplishments and her deep regret about the past. For the first time, Amara felt a small opening in her heart toward her mother. She did not immediately call her or visit, but she kept the letter on her bedside table and read it sometimes before she went to sleep. Forgiveness, she was learning, was not something that happened all at once. It was a process, a journey, and she was still on that journey. But she was no longer running away from her past. She was simply running toward her future, and that future looked bright and full of promise. The West African Business Summit was being held in Accra for the first time, and Amara was excited to attend. It was her 5th year working as regional director, and she had been invited to speak on a panel about modern marketing strategies in emerging markets. She had prepared her presentation carefully, practicing her speech multiple times and making sure her slides were perfect. She wore a professional but elegant outfit, a tailored black blazer with a vibrant African print blouse underneath. She felt confident and ready. The conference was held at a large hotel in the heart of Accra, and it was filled with successful business people from all over West Africa. There were entrepreneurs, investors, company executives, and industry experts. The energy in the halls was electric. People were networking, exchanging business cards, and talking about exciting new projects and opportunities. Amara felt energized by the atmosphere. She walked through the conference halls, attending workshops and seminars, and soaking in all the knowledge and inspiration around her. It was during lunch on the second day of the conference that Amara first saw Tund. He was standing near the buffet table, talking animatedly with a group of people about sustainable architecture and affordable housing projects. He was tall and well-dressed, with an intelligent face and warm brown eyes. But what struck Amara most was not his appearance, it was the way he spoke. He was passionate about his work, genuinely interested in the people he was talking to, and he asked thoughtful questions that showed he was really listening to their responses. Amara found herself staring at him for longer than she should have. She quickly looked away, feeling a little embarrassed at being caught. She had not thought about dating in a serious way since her heartbreak with Kwame. She had dated a few men casually over the years, but nothing had felt right. She had convinced herself that she was happy being single, that she did not need a man to complete her life. And she meant it. But that did not mean she could not appreciate an attractive, intelligent man when she saw one. She was standing at the dessert table trying to decide between a chocolate cake and a fruit tart, when she heard a voice behind her. "The chocolate is excellent, but I recommend the fruit tart. It is made with fresh mangoes from the local market." She turned to see the man from before, the one she had been staring at. He was smiling at her, and his smile was genuine and kind. "Thank you for the recommendation," Amara said, smiling back. "I am Amara. I work for a marketing company based here in Accra." "I am Tund," he replied, extending his hand. "I am an architect. I work on sustainable housing and urban development projects across West Africa." They shook hands, and Amara noticed that his grip was firm and confident, but not aggressive. They began talking, and the conversation flowed naturally and easily. Tund asked her about her work, and she told him about her projects and her vision for helping African businesses grow and succeed. He listened carefully, asked intelligent questions, and seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. When Amara asked him about his work, his eyes lit up. He told her about his dream to create beautiful, affordable homes for people who did not have access to proper housing. He talked about using locally sourced materials and traditional architectural styles while incorporating modern technology and design. As they talked, Amara realized something that surprised her. Tund was not just listening to her out of politeness. He was genuinely engaging with what she was saying. He did not try to dominate the conversation or make it all about himself. He did not suggest that her work was less important than his. Instead, he seemed to view her as an equal, as someone whose opinions and ideas had real value. After lunch, they exchanged contact information. Tund asked if he could call her sometime, and Amara said yes. She had not expected to feel excited about a man in this way for a very long time. But there was something different about Tund. He seemed safe but not boring. He was ambitious, but not in a way that made him disrespect other people's ambitions. He was confident but not arrogant. Tund called her 3 days after the conference. They talked for 2 hours that first phone call, discussing everything from their childhood dreams to their current projects to their favorite books and movies. When they finally said goodbye, Amara realized that she had smiled throughout the entire conversation. They began seeing each other regularly, going on dates to restaurants, art galleries, and beaches. They took walks through the city, talking about life and their plans for the future. What Amara loved most about Tund was that he celebrated her success instead of feeling threatened by it. When she received a promotion and a significant salary increase, he took her out to a fancy restaurant to celebrate. When she told him about her marketing campaigns, he asked detailed questions about her strategies and offered thoughtful feedback. When she talked about her dreams of eventually starting her own consulting firm, he did not laugh or tell her it was impossible. Instead, he said, "That is a brilliant idea. You are smart enough and talented enough to make it happen. I will support you however I can." After about 6 months of dating, Tund took Amara to a beautiful beach at sunset. They walked along the shore, hand in hand, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Tund stopped walking and turned to face her. He told her that he had never met anyone like her, someone who was so strong and independent, yet so kind and compassionate. He said that he had fallen in love with her courage, her intelligence, and her beautiful spirit. Then he got down on one knee and pulled out a simple but elegant diamond ring. He asked her to marry him, to build a life with him, to be his partner not just in love but in all things. He told her that he wanted a wife who would continue to pursue her dreams, who would challenge him to be better, and who would stand beside him as an equal. He did not ask her to change who she was or to sacrifice her ambitions. He asked her to be herself, completely and fully. Amara cried as she said yes. She cried because she was happy, but also because she realized how far she had come. 5 years earlier, she had been a broken woman, devastated by betrayal. Now she was being asked to marry a man who genuinely valued and respected her. A man who saw her strength as something to celebrate, not something to fear or try to control. A man who had chosen her freely, without manipulation, without family pressure, without doubt. They told their families the happy news. Tun's family welcomed Amara warmly. His mother embraced her and told her that she could see how much her son loved her. His father shook her hand firmly and said that Tund had made an excellent choice. Amara also told her mother about the engagement. Mrs. Okonkwo cried tears of joy and asked for forgiveness one more time. This time Amara was ready to forgive. Not completely, there was still some hurt there, but she was ready to take the first steps toward rebuilding a relationship with her mother. As Amara looked at the engagement ring on her finger, she thought about how much her life had changed. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who thought her worth depended on whether a man wanted to marry her. She thought about the journey she had taken to become a woman who knew her own worth, who had built a successful career, who had learned to love and respect herself. And now she had found someone who loved that woman, the strong, independent, ambitious woman that she had become. She was ready to say yes to marriage, but not because she needed it to feel complete. She was saying yes because she had found someone worthy of her love, someone who would walk beside her as an equal, someone who would support her dreams while pursuing his own. The engagement party was scheduled to begin at 7 o'clock in the evening at a beautiful garden venue overlooking the sea in Accra. Amara had spent weeks planning every detail. She wanted the celebration to be elegant but not too formal, intimate but filled with joy. She had invited her closest friends, her colleagues from work, and some family members from Lagos. She had been hesitant about inviting her mother, but Tund had encouraged her to do so. He believed that forgiveness and family reconciliation were important, and he thought that her mother deserved a chance to be part of this happy moment. The afternoon before the party, Amara stood in her bedroom trying on her dress for the final time. It was a stunning creation, a custom-made gown that combined traditional Kent cloth with modern design. The dress had a fitted bodice made of white silk with gold embroidery, and the skirt flowed beautifully with panels of vibrant Kent cloth in blues, golds, and reds. Her hairstylist had created an elegant updo with flowers woven through her hair. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like a queen, radiant and confident. By 6:30 in the evening, the garden was transformed into a magical space. Soft golden lights hung from trees, creating a warm and romantic atmosphere. Tables were decorated with white flowers and candles. A live band played gentle highlife music, and servers moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and appetizers. Amara's friends were already there, dressed in their finest clothes, talking and laughing. The energy was perfect, joyful, celebratory and full of love. Tund arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, looking incredibly handsome in a traditional Nigerian outfit, a perfectly tailored agbada in deep blue with intricate gold embroidery. When he saw Amara, his face lit up with genuine joy and admiration. He walked toward her, took her hands and twirled her slowly, admiring her dress from every angle. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen," he whispered, and he kissed her gently on the forehead. Amara felt completely happy and secure. She was exactly where she wanted to be, with exactly the right person. The party was in full swing by 8 o'clock. People were eating, dancing, and celebrating. Amara's boss, Mr. Mensah, gave a speech about her talents and her potential. Her best friend Amma stood up and told funny stories about their adventures together in Accra. The band played beautiful music and several people danced. Amara felt like she was floating on air. She moved through the party with Tund at her side, greeting guests, accepting congratulations, and feeling genuinely loved and celebrated. It was around 9 o'clock when Amara first noticed a commotion near the entrance to the garden. She saw her mother, Mrs. Okonkwo, arriving with 2 other people. Amara's heart jumped for a moment because she recognized them immediately. It was Kwame and Chioma, her ex-boyfriend and her sister. The 2 people who had betrayed her all those years ago. For a moment, Amara felt all the old pain and anger rise up inside her. But then something interesting happened. She took a deep breath, squeezed Tund's hand, and she felt the panic begin to fade. She was no longer the same woman who had been devastated by their betrayal. She was stronger now. She had built a new life, achieved professional success, surrounded herself with genuine friends, and found a man who truly loved her. Their arrival did not have the power to destroy what she had built. "Are you okay?" Tund asked, noticing the sudden change in her expression. She looked up at him and nodded. "Yes, I am fine. Those people who just arrived, they are part of my past, but they are not part of my present or my future. I will explain later, but I want you to stay close to me." Tund nodded and kept his arm around her waist. They continued greeting guests, but Amara was aware of her mother, Kwame, and Chioma standing awkwardly near the entrance. Mrs. Okonkwo looked nervous, as if she was not sure if she should have come. She was trying to smile, but there was clear anxiety on her face. Chioma looked uncomfortable and sad, dressed in a nice dress but without the joy that most guests were displaying. Kwame looked shocked, as if he was seeing something he had not expected to see. After a few minutes, Mrs. Okonkwo gathered the courage to approach Amara. She walked over, bringing Kwame and Chioma with her. Amara saw them coming and stood her ground. She did not run, she did not hide, and she did not pretend they were not there. Instead, she stood tall, with Tund beside her, and she waited for them to reach her. "My daughter," Mrs. Okonkwo said, her voice trembling slightly. "I am so sorry we came without telling you. I wanted to be here for your happiness. I hope you do not mind." Amara looked at her mother and she saw genuine remorse and love in her eyes. She also saw that her mother had aged since she last saw her. There were more lines on her face and her hair was more gray. Amara realized that her mother had suffered too, that she had lived with the guilt of what she had done. Amara reached out and hugged her mother. It was a hug that said many things. It was not complete forgiveness, but it was a beginning. When Amara pulled back from the hug, she turned to face Kwame. His face had gone completely pale. He was staring at Tund with shock and confusion, and then he looked back at Amara. In that moment, Kwame seemed to suddenly understand something. He understood that Amara had moved on, that she had built an incredible life, and that she was happy without him. It was clear from the expression on his face that he realized he had made a terrible mistake. Chioma stood beside Kwame, and tears began to stream down her face. She was not crying happy tears. She was crying tears of regret and sadness. She looked at her sister and then she looked at Kwame and then she looked down at the ground. It was obvious to everyone watching that Chioma understood the contrast between her own life and her sister's life. While Amara was radiant with genuine love and happiness, Chioma looked trapped and unhappy. The marriage that their mother had arranged, the marriage that was supposed to be perfect, had not turned out the way anyone expected. Tund extended his hand to Kwame and introduced himself with complete confidence. "I am Tund, Amara's fiancé," he said warmly. "It is nice to meet you. I have heard a little about your family, and I can see where Amara gets her strength and intelligence." Kwame shook Tund's hand weakly, unable to speak. Amara could see that he was trying to process what was happening. He was probably comparing himself to Tund, probably regretting his choice to marry Chioma, probably wishing he could go back in time and make a different decision. But Amara realized that his regret was not her problem anymore. She had spent enough time carrying his pain and his choices. Now it was time for him to carry his own. The moment passed quickly. Mrs. Okonkwo, Kwame, and Chioma moved to the side of the party, and Amara and Tund continued celebrating with their guests. But something had changed in the energy of the evening. The shock of seeing her past suddenly appear had clarified something for Amara. It had shown her, in a very concrete way, how far she had come. It had shown her that she had made the right choices, that leaving Lagos had been the right decision, and that choosing to focus on her own growth and happiness had been the best thing she could have done. Later in the evening, as Amara danced with Tund under the stars, she felt a deep sense of peace. The ghosts of her past were no longer ghosts, they were just people who had made choices that did not work out. She had made different choices, and those choices had led her to this moment, to this man, to this happiness. She was no longer defined by what Kwame and Chioma had done to her. She was defined by what she had done for herself. After the initial shock of seeing Kwame and Chioma at the party had worn off, Amara suggested to Tund that they take a walk away from the crowd. They needed to talk privately and she needed to explain everything. They walked hand in hand away from the garden lights, down a path that led to a quiet spot overlooking the ocean. The moon was full and bright, casting a silver glow across the water. The sound of the waves was soothing and peaceful. Tund sat down on a stone bench and Amara sat beside him. She took a deep breath and began to tell him the story. She started from the beginning, explaining how she had met Kwame and how much she had loved him. She described how she had introduced him to her mother with so much hope and excitement. She told him about Mrs. Okonkwo's manipulation, about how her mother had convinced Kwame that Chioma would be a better wife. She explained how her sister and her boyfriend had betrayed her trust, how they had conspired together, and how it had shattered her heart. As Amara spoke, Tund listened without interruption. He did not try to make excuses for them. He did not try to minimize her pain by saying things like, "It was not that bad," or, "You should have moved on by now." Instead, he simply listened with compassion and understanding. She told him about the years of pain that followed, about how she had felt utterly alone and betrayed. She described how broken she had been, how she had lost faith in people and in love. Then she told him about her decision to move to Accra. She explained how that move had saved her life, how it had forced her to rebuild herself from the ground up. She told him about her friends Amma, Nadia, and Zara, about the yoga classes and the dancing lessons, about the professional success she had achieved. She talked about how she had learned to love herself again, how she had discovered her own strength and capability, and how she had begun to believe that happiness was possible for her. When Amara finished telling her story, she looked at Tun to see his reaction. He was quiet for a moment, and then he turned to face her completely. He took both of her hands in his and looked directly into her eyes. "Amara," he said softly, "what you are telling me makes me understand you even better than I did before. You are one of the strongest women I have ever met. Most people would have been destroyed by what happened to you. But you did not let it destroy you. Instead, you used it as a reason to become better, to grow, to build something beautiful from the pain." He continued speaking, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "I did not fall in love with you just because you are beautiful or because you are intelligent or because you are successful. I fell in love with you because of your character, because of your resilience, because of your ability to face pain and not let it make you bitter. You could have become a woman full of anger and revenge. You could have spent your life hating your mother and your sister in Kwame. But you did not. Instead, you chose to heal. You chose to build. You chose to love again. That is remarkable, and I want you to know that I see that and I honor that." Amara felt tears streaming down her face as Tun spoke. She had not realized how much she needed to hear those words, how much she needed someone to truly understand and appreciate the journey she had been on. Tun pulled her close and held her while she cried. These were not tears of sadness. They were tears of release, tears of finally feeling truly seen and understood. After they sat in silence for a few minutes, they heard footsteps approaching them. It was Kwame. He looked nervous and uncomfortable, and it was clear that he had been looking for Amara. He stopped a short distance away, unsure if he should come closer. "Amara," he said hesitantly, "may I speak with you for a moment? Alone?" Tund looked at Amara questioningly, as if asking if she wanted him to stay or leave. Amara nodded to Tund and he stood up. "I will go back to the party," he said. "Take your time." He kissed Amara on the forehead and walked away, giving her and Kwame privacy. Kwame sat down on the bench where Tund had been sitting. He looked much older than Amara remembered. There were deep lines around his eyes and he looked tired and sad. For a long moment he did not speak. He just sat there staring out at the ocean. Finally he began to talk. "Amara, I owe you the biggest apology of my life. What I did to you was wrong. What we did to you, your mother, your sister, and me, was cruel and unfair. I have been thinking about this for years, but I have never had the courage to say it to your face until now." He turned to look at her, and Amara could see that his eyes were filled with regret and sadness. "I allowed myself to be influenced by your mother because I was weak. I should have stood up for what I believed in. I should have fought for our relationship. But instead I took the easy path, the path that required less resistance and less conflict. And in doing that I destroyed something beautiful and true." Kwame continued, his voice shaking slightly. "I have been married to Chioma for 6 years. We have 2 beautiful children together and I love them more than life itself. But if I am being honest, my marriage is not happy. Chioma and I are not compatible. We do not make each other laugh. We do not inspire each other. We are just 2 people who are stuck together because of a choice that was made years ago." He looked directly at Amara and said, "When I saw you tonight looking so happy with that man, so radiant and confident, I realized what I had lost. I realized that I had thrown away the one good thing in my life. I have spent years regretting my choice, wishing I could go back in time and do things differently. I wanted to tell you that I am sorry, that I made a terrible mistake, and that I wish I could undo the pain I caused you." Amara listened to Kwame's apology, and she felt something interesting happening inside her. She felt compassion for him. She understood that he had made a poor choice, and now he was living with the consequences of that choice. But she also realized something very important. His regret did not heal her. His apology, while sincere, did not change what had happened. It did not erase the years of pain she had suffered. And more importantly, she no longer needed his apology to feel okay about herself. She spoke to him calmly and kindly. "Kwame, I appreciate you saying this to me. I can see that you are genuinely sorry, and I believe that you have suffered because of your choice. But I need to tell you something important. I have already healed. I have already moved on. Your regret does not determine my happiness. Your apology does not define my self-worth. I have learned that my value comes from within myself, not from whether you made the right choice or the wrong choice. She continued, her voice steady and strong. I'm not angry at you anymore. I'm not bitter. I have forgiven you not for your sake, but for my own peace of mind. I have forgiven my mother. I have even forgiven my sister in my own way. But that forgiveness does not mean I need to go back to being close to you or to them. It simply means that I have released the anger and pain that was holding me back. Amara stood up and looked at Kwame compassionately. You asked me to regret my life, to wish that things had been different. But I do not wish that anymore. If you had married me instead of Chioma, I might never have moved to Accra. I might never have built my career. I might never have discovered my own strength. I might never have met Tund. Your choice, as painful as it was at the time, led me to this beautiful life that I have built for myself. So I thank you, actually, for making that choice. It freed me to become the woman I was always meant to be. Kwame looked down at the ground, and Amara could see his shoulders shaking as he cried silently. She felt sadness for him, but she also felt relief. She was finally free, not just from the pain of the past but from needing anything from him or from her family. She had given herself that freedom years ago when she chose to move to Accra and focus on her own life. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. I wish you well, Kwame. I hope that you find a way to make peace with your choices and to build a happy life for yourself and your children. But I cannot do that work for you. Only you can do that. Then she turned and walked back toward the party. As she walked, she felt lighter than she had ever felt before. She realized that this moment, this conversation, had been the final piece of her healing. She had finally told her ex-boyfriend face to face that she had moved on and that she was happy. She had told him that his regret was not her responsibility and that she no longer needed anything from him. When she returned to the garden, Tund was waiting for her near the dance floor. He saw her approaching and smiled warmly. He pulled her into his arms, and they began to dance slowly to the soft music that the band was playing. As they danced, Amara felt completely at peace. She had survived betrayal and pain. She had built a life that was entirely her own. And now, she was choosing to share that life with a man who genuinely valued and respected her. She looked up at Tund and smiled. He asked her, Are you okay? Yes, she said simply. I am more than okay. I'm happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. And I am ready for whatever comes next. The party continued around them, friends dancing, music playing, laughter filling the air. But for Amara, the only thing that mattered was this moment, this man, and the knowledge that she had finally completely healed. She had written her own destiny, and that destiny was beautiful.